She stood at the edge of the garden, a trembling ultrasound photo still clutched between her fingers. Alina had imagined this moment for weeks, the warm smile, the teary eyes, maybe even a kiss on her forehead. But when she held the sonogram up to Ryan and whispered, "We're going to have a baby," his face didn't soften, it hardened. A flicker of something shocked, dread, maybe fear crossed his eyes before he stepped back, turned, and walked inside without a word. No joy, no questions, no smile. She didn't cry. She stood there, her heartbeat steadying with every second of silence. That moment where joy was supposed to be met with warmth but was instead answered with cold retreat planted something else inside her. Not grief, not panic, something colder, something quieter. 4 days after, the air around her changed. Ryan was present, but distant. His excuses grew oddly consistent. Work meetings ran late, his phone seemed to be glued to him, and calls once taken freely in front of her now required locked doors. He stopped asking about the pregnancy. Once, she mentioned a checkup, and he muttered something unintelligible while scrolling through his phone. At night, he'd lie beside her, stiff and silent, as though her body growing with life, something to be avoided. Still, she said nothing. She smiled. She listened, and when she saw him forget his phone one rushed morning, something told her not to follow him to the door with it. She waited until she heard the car drive off, her hand hovering over the device like it was laced with poison. But what she found wasn't a call log or message thread, it was a photo. A woman, standing close to him, laughing in a restaurant she'd never been to. Elena's fingers shook. She backed away from the phone, heart pounding not from jealousy, but from the clarity of truth. But that wasn't the worst of it. Later that week, looking for an old bank document, she opened the drawer in his study. Neatly stacked beneath tax forms was an envelope with her name never sealed, never meant to be seen. Inside was a letter. Not one he had written, but one he had hidden. From a woman named Camille. The handwriting curled like a signature meant to seduce. "I miss your touch. Does she suspect anything yet?" Alina sat very still. The world didn't tilt or burn. It simply paused, as if giving her time to decide who she'd be next. She closed the drawer, folded the letter, and quietly began to listen. Ryan didn't notice. That was the most insulting part. He still wore his mask of affection during the day, all while texting lies with his back turned to her at night. She watched him in silence, the same way a hunter might study the brush for a subtle shift in leaves. At dinner, she asked how his day was. He smiled. At night, she rolled over first so he wouldn't see her open eyes. She didn't accuse, she didn't cry. She documented everything. Voicemails, bank transfers. That dinner reservation in his email labeled conference dinner, when it was for two. She took screenshots, printed receipts, collected lies like lace, delicate but damning. Then came the voicemail. She didn't mean to hear it. He'd left his phone charging in the kitchen, and curiosity had long since evolved into precision. The woman's voice floated out, half-whispered, coded in faux secrecy. "I can't wait to have you to myself again. I hate pretending." Pretending, Alina almost laughed. That word, thrown so casually by a stranger, now echoed in every corner of her life. She began to pretend too. When Ryan came home late the next evening, she was humming, setting the table for two. Candlelight flickered. He looked surprised but not suspicious. "Just wanted us to have a little quiet time," she said sweetly, and the fool believed her. Day by day, she planted seeds. She'd bring up hypothetical situations over dinner, stories of people betrayed, of secrets exposed. Ryan would chuckle nervously or brush it off. She began leaving her laptop open to articles about infidelity law, inheritance rights, and child custody. She made sure he saw them. Still, he didn't suspect a thing. Then came the first slip. He left his laptop open. Alina saw the email chain. A digital trail of deceit. It was enough. She copied everything, sent it to a hidden account. And then she started making calls to lawyers, to banks, to the woman's fiancé, whose name she discovered with shocking ease. She didn't rush. She waited for Ryan to go on his business trip. While he was gone, she made her move. She hired a forensic accountant, filed paperwork, transferred key documents, and sent the fiancé a message that included a single photo and the words, "You deserve to know." Ryan returned to find Alina, sitting at the kitchen table, sipping tea. He smiled, unsure. She smiled back. The following week, the unraveling began. Camille showed up at Ryan's office, screaming. Her fiancé had dumped her. Her job had found out. The chain of consequences had begun, and Ryan couldn't understand why it all hit at once. Then came the audit. The frozen account. The HR notice. Home, Alina remained quiet, each step measured. She presented one truth at a time. A printout here. A voicemail there. Always with the same calm. Ryan began to panic. He begged. He shouted. He accused her of spying. No, she said softly, just observing. He had no words for that, and then, one night, she invited him to sit. She laid out everything, dates, receipts, lies. Each time he tried to speak, she raised a hand. When he asked, "Why are you doing this?" she finally looked him in the eyes. "Because you made me live a lie. I'm just returning the favor with interest." She didn't yell. She didn't need to. His silence was louder than any scream could have been. Within weeks he had nothing. Camille had vanished. His job let him go, due to the incident. Alina had ensured she would get sole custody once the child arrived. The house, it was in her name. The accounts. She had receipts, showing his hidden transfers. He couldn't touch hers now. Ryan stood in the doorway that last day, bags packed, looking smaller than ever. "You planned this," he said. She didn't deny it. She simply said, "I protected myself, that's all." And then she closed the door behind him. There were no tears, no dramatic goodbyes, just the soft hum of peace returning to a home that had forgotten how to breathe. In the weeks that followed, Elena's world grew still again. She painted the nursery in soft colors, walked through the house, barefoot, music playing low. For the first time in years, the silence was kind. She didn't speak of revenge. She didn't need to, she just lived, and that, in the end, was her loudest triumph. Alina had always believed love had a rhythm, quiet, steady, like the familiar brushing of fingers across knuckles in passing, the unspoken language of long-tied hearts. But lately, Ryan's rhythm had faltered. His hands still reached for hers across the table, but something about the touch had changed. It felt performative, calculated, like a man playing a role he no longer believed in. She didn't say anything. At first, she studied his eyes instead, the way he looked at her without really seeing. The warmth had gone somewhere else. She felt it in her bones before she ever had proof. At first she told herself it was work. He'd been under pressure, right? Launching that campaign, managing new hires. She even made excuses for him out loud, half to convince herself. But the late nights grew longer, and the excuses thinner. He came home tired, lips dry with silence, eyes glued to his phone. Dinner became an exercise in empty conversations, safe topics, shallow words. When she asked if something was wrong, he gave her a practiced smile, the kind that curled just enough to pass as sincerity. "Just stress," he said. But his touch no longer lingered. His embrace no longer reassured. That smile began to haunt her. It was the same one he gave a woman at a work event months earlier, the one who'd laughed too loudly at his jokes and touched his arm just a little too long. Alina had noticed back then but brushed it off. Now, the memory returned with sharper clarity. And with it came others. The text message from a number she didn't recognize, the way he flinched when she glanced over his shoulder. At the time, they felt like coincidences. Now, they echoed like foreshadowing. One night, as she sat alone on the balcony, Maya's voice came rushing back. Her best friend had once warned her, casually over wine, "Just be sure you know who you're married to." Alina had laughed then. Now, the words coiled in her chest. It wasn't paranoia if the signs were there. It wasn't crazy if it started making sense. The next day, a phone bill caught her attention. Ryan had always handled the finances, but a payment notification had come to her email by mistake. The number was unfamiliar. Not his, not hers. It was a second-line one she'd never seen, registered under his name. A burner phone, the kind used for things that weren't meant to be found. She didn't confront him. Instead, she waited for him to leave for a meeting. Searched the drawers, checked the glove box, and there it was, tucked beneath a stack of business cards. She didn't open the phone right away. Her fingers hovered. The moment felt sacred somehow, like crossing a boundary she didn't choose but was forced into. When she unlocked it, the truth wasn't dramatic, it was quiet. Messages, photos, nicknames. Conversations planned around her schedule, weekend trips she'd never known he took. That night, she felt nothing. Just a hollowing out, like someone had opened a door inside her and drained the light. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She kept watching. The confirmation came in the smallest betrayal. In the guest bathroom trash, where she never kept anything personal. A crumpled receipt, faint ink smeared by moisture, a pregnancy test box. She hadn't bought one, hadn't taken one. Someone else had been in her home, and they hadn't even tried to hide it. She held the box in her palm like it was a grenade. Then, quietly, she placed it back in the bin exact where she found it. Everything began to replay. His compliments, his sudden surges of affection, the way he kissed her cheek after work, only when he was late. All those moments she once tucked in a corner of her heart, they now felt like lines from a script written for her benefit. When she closed her eyes, she saw his lips move, but she only heard lies, and then she remembered the day she told him she was pregnant, the way his eyes widened not with joy, but fear. Not of fatherhood, but of exposure. That wasn't the look of a man overwhelmed with love. That was the look of a man trying to calculate how much longer he could keep to lives from colliding. Alina didn't tell him she knew. She didn't need to. Instead, she started listening more carefully. Let him talk. Let him make excuses. She started asking seemingly innocent questions, noting every inconsistency, every hesitation. She wasn't looking for confrontation. She was looking for patterns. Because the truth doesn't scream, it whispers, and Alina had learned how to hear it. She stopped asking why he was late and started noting when. She took screenshots, saved call logs, kept a journal. He thought she was softer, now more compliant. But beneath the stillness, her mind was moving like clockwork. The betrayal wasn't just his affair, it was his audacity, his belief that she would never find out, that she wouldn't do anything even if she did. But he'd underestimated the strength of a woman holding life inside her. Each time he touched her belly, pretending to be the excited father-to-be, her spine grew colder. I need to know why, she whispered one night, long after he'd fallen asleep beside her. It wasn't just a question anymore, it was a mission. She had something to protect now. Not him, not their marriage, herself, her child. The truth, she wasn't going to break. She was going to build, and when the time came, she'd make sure Ryan understood that the quiet ones weren't the ones who stayed silent. They were the ones who waited for the perfect moment to strike. The betrayal didn't break her, sharpened her. Alina sat still, in the silence of their shared bedroom. The one they'd decorated with laughter and promises, now echoing with truth too loud to ignore. She had cried, yes, the first night, when the pieces first cracked. She let the pain crawl its way out of her lungs in silence. But when the tears dried, clarity settled in like cold steel. This was no longer about saving a marriage. This was about reclaiming herself. She would not scream, she would not beg, she would become the woman he never saw coming. She began with the numbers because numbers don't lie. Unlike smiles and sweet nothings, they leave trails. Phone logs, text histories, credit card statements. At first, the inconsistencies were small: 2 dinners billed in one night, overlapping calls on opposite coasts. But soon, the pattern grew louder than his voice ever had. Payments labeled consulting sent monthly to an account she didn't recognize. Hotel bookings in cities he claimed to hate. Uber rides from neighborhoods he never mentioned. Each entry rewrote a moment in their shared past. She remembered the emergency business trip to Chicago. How he left without kissing her goodbye. How he came back exhausted, claiming the deal fell through. But the receipts told a different story: a luxury suite, champagne ordered at midnight, and a flower delivery to the same room in a name that wasn't hers. One by one, the stories he spun came undone, unraveling years of lies stitched with practiced ease. As the picture came into focus, the truth grew darker than she ever prepared for. It wasn't just another woman, it was a second life. He hadn't just strayed, he'd built a home, supported a child, provided for a woman he never mentioned by name. The transactions weren't sporadic, they were structured, consistent, deliberate. Rent payments, school fees, private medical bills, and then came the photographs. Hidden deep in a cloud folder synced to his burner phone. Pictures of a little boy with Ryan's eyes, holding hands with a woman Alina recognized. Nicole, the woman from his office. The one with family issues who disappeared after the annual retreat 2 years ago. The same woman he dismissed as too emotional when Alina once asked about her sudden absence. Nicole, who now appeared in photo after photo beside a child that looked like a perfect blend of them both. But the worst wound came with the dates. The child had been born 5 years ago, long before the wedding, long before the proposal. Ryan hadn't made a mistake. He had made a choice. He had chosen to create a life with another woman, then turned to Alina for convenience, for elevation, for access. He married her, not out of love, but strategy. She remembered their first meeting, how charming he'd been, how quickly he adapted to her interests, how often he'd said she inspired him. Now it felt rehearsed. Every compliment, every carefully timed gesture. He had studied her, not to love her, but to use her. Her name opened doors. Her inheritance gave him leverage. Her status masked his duplicity. And yet, she said nothing. She became his silence, observing, gathering, building an arsenal. From every lie he thought was buried, screenshots of messages, downloads of financial transfers, photos of the second phone. Every bit of evidence cataloged, named, secured. This was not a confrontation. This was a collection. And each piece was a blade she'd one day place in front of him, while he slept beside her in false peace. Alina rewrote everything. She contacted her lawyer under the pretense of updating her estate, quietly removed his name from future trusts, reassigned power of attorney, modified the prenup, clauses he never cared to read. Every safeguard was laid down carefully. Dressed as routine, she wasn't leaving broken, she was leaving bulletproof. But one thing lingered Nicole. Alina needed to understand her, not to hate her, but to learn the full truth. And so, she created someone new, a fake identity, an online presence built with precision. She reached out to Nicole as a businesswoman, offering philanthropic opportunities for single mothers. Harmless, kind, disarming, Nicole responded. Their conversations revealed more than Alina expected. Nicole believed Ryan was a devoted single father trying to co-parent with an ex who wasn't in the picture. He visited every weekend. He'd told her he couldn't marry again, it was too painful after being betrayed. Nicole spoke of him with softness. She had no idea he was already married. No idea she wasn't the only one deceived. That was the final thread. They were both victims, both manipulated into believing they were the only ones. Alina stared at the screen, heart calm but resolute. There was no need to tell Nicole yet. Not until everything was ready. Because this wasn't just about catching him, it was about making him live the fall. He had spun a web so wide, he thought he was untouchable. But he forgot one thing: webs are easy to build, but impossible to escape once tangled. And Alina had just finished spinning hers. Ryan kissed her cheek like nothing was wrong, murmuring about a conference in Seattle, meetings lined up, back-to-back presentations. Alina smiled, nodded, and helped him pack, folding his shirts neatly, asking no questions. But when the door closed behind him, she opened her laptop. The tracker she'd installed weeks ago blinked to life. He wasn't heading to the airport. He wasn't going anywhere near Seattle. He never left the city. He drove 15 miles east to a hotel tucked off the freeway. Not exactly corporate lodging. Alina didn't react. She watched his location sit idle in the same place for over an hour before she moved. Calmly, deliberately. She dressed not as herself, but as someone else, entirely clean slacks. Hair tied back, a plain blazer, housekeeping level invisible. By the time she reached the hallway outside room 503, the adrenaline had cooled into ice. She waited, and then the door opened. He stood there, barefoot, shirt unbuttoned, smiling at a woman holding a toddler. Elena's heart didn't break, it hardened. Ryan leaned down, kissed the child's forehead, then the woman's lips. The moment froze in time as she raised her phone and took the photo. A single shot was all she needed. She turned and walked away before anyone noticed. The weight of the moment didn't shake her. It confirmed everything. She didn't cry. She didn't confront. She returned home before him, made tea, and waited. When he arrived hours later, feigning exhaustion, she nodded sympathetically. Asked about the keynote speech. He lied so easily, it would have been laughable if it weren't so calculated. Later that night, he left his tablet open on the couch. A message pinged. He was in the shower. Alina didn't hesitate. She read it, and then another, and another. They weren't just romantic, they were incriminating. Financial plans, real estate investments made under her name, a joint bank account opened with forged documents, a plan to secure things before she finds out. Her stomach twisted, but she didn't stop. She scrolled through email threads, spreadsheets, photos of bank cards and identification forms she never signed. And in one message, the words that burned themselves into her memory: she won't notice. She trusts too easily. He hadn't just betrayed her heart. He'd robbed her in slow motion, smiling as he did it. She copied every file, exported every message, saved every attachment. The fraud was undeniable. Embezzlement, identity theft, even falsified employment records. He had used her company's name to apply for grants, redirected funds, doctored invoices, all hidden behind a marriage certificate. But now, she had everything. He used her name without consent. Now, she'd use his silence against him. In the following days, Elena played her part, warm, distracted, the dutiful wife. Behind the scenes, she moved like a shadow. She met with her lawyer under the guise of updating her estate. Quietly alerted her accountants to investigate unusual discrepancies. Pulled her PR firm into a sealed strategy call. Every document she signed pushed Ryan closer to a fall he couldn't see coming. No confrontation, just preparation. Each file she saved added another brick to the wall she was building around herself, and one he'd never scale. She hired a forensic team to confirm the signature forgeries. Requested copies of every transaction he'd authorized. The paper trail was clean, clear, and damning. Still, she said nothing. Instead, she did one more thing. She opened a new account, created a trust. Not for Ryan, not for herself, for the life growing inside her. He didn't know yet, and he wouldn't. Her unborn child would never carry his name, his lies, or his legacy. The trust fund was sealed heir to Tunder, her maiden name, governed by clauses Ryan could never touch. It would carry only truth, only her strength. Her child's inheritance would be made from survival, not deception. She returned home that evening, watched Ryan laugh at a sitcom rerun, completely unaware. She stared at him for a moment longer, realizing just how much of her life had been a stage set for his ego. But the curtain was closing. All it would take was one truth. A single confession strategically revealed to the right regulator, the right partner, the right investor, and the empire he built would collapse in on itself. She would not scream it, she would whisper it, quietly, coldly, effectively. He built his world on lies. She would dismantle it with truth. Elena held the evidence tightly, knowing the weight it carried would shatter more than just secrets. It would destroy the illusion Ryan had so carefully crafted. She wrapped the files, videos, and documents in a plain package and left it at Nicole's doorstep, unsigned and untraceable. The silence of anonymity protected her as much as it protected the truth. There was no need for words. The proof spoke for itself. Each image, each timeline, and every forged signature whispered the story. Nicole never wanted to hear but had the right to know. Nicole's shock soon morphed into furious clarity. With Elena's evidence in hand, she confronted Ryan without hesitation. The man who had juggled two families, two lies, could no longer dodge the confrontation. His excuses stumbled against cold facts, and the woman who once tolerated his deception now demanded he leave the life he had pretended to manage. The house that had been a fragile facade was now empty of trust, and Ryan's presence became unwelcome, unwanted. For the first time, Nicole saw the full extent of Ryan's betrayal, not just to her but to both families intertwined by his lies. Her eyes hardened with resolve. She demanded answers, financial support, and most fiercely, custody of their child. This wasn't a plea. It was a demand born from years of deception, and Ryan had no room left to deny the truth. The two women, once unknowingly bound by pain, now stood united by the one truth Ryan tried so desperately to bury. Meanwhile, Elena's legal team moved with precision and power. Charges were filed: fraud, identity theft, manipulation, each document meticulously prepared, signed with Elena's unwavering conviction. The courtroom became the stage where Ryan's empire began to crumble. The names and numbers that had once protected him now exposed every lie, every stolen moment, and every forged signature. The foundation he built was cracked, shaking beneath. The weight of justice. The news spread quickly. Ryan's company suspended him immediately. Investors withdrew their support, and the scandal ignited a wildfire of gossip and judgment. His carefully cultivated image of success and respectability burned away in public view. Each headline, each whispered accusation, tore away the last threads of his control. The fall from power was as swift as it was deserved. Through it all, Elena remained calm, composed, and resolute. She sent Ryan a final message: no anger, no bitterness, only a clear and cold farewell. I'm not angry, I'm free. Those words closed a chapter with quiet strength, leaving no room for retaliation or regret. Her voice carried the weight of someone who had reclaimed control, and that alone was punishment enough. Ryan searched for her calls, went unanswered, messages ignored. The home they once shared was empty, every trace of Alina erased behind a shield of legal silence and personal resolve. He was left grasping at shadows, powerless to reach the woman who had quietly slipped away from his tangled web of lies. Alina told her story anonymously to the world, her words spreading like wildfire across the internet. The tale of betrayal, strength, and quiet vengeance resonated with thousands. The day I told my husband I was pregnant and uncovered a double life became a beacon for those betrayed in silence, sparking sympathy, outrage, and awe in equal measure. Her voice, once silenced by shock, now echoed through countless screens and hearts. She never screamed. She never fought with fire. Instead, she let the truth blaze alone, burning brighter and truer than any rage could. It was a revenge that needed no furiously undeniable facts and the steady power of justice. Elena's final thought lingered long after the dust settled. I didn't raise my voice. I raised the truth, and let it speak louder than revenge. Ryan's carefully constructed empire began to crumble faster than anyone anticipated. The scandal that Elena and Nicole had unearthed swept through the corporate world like wildfire, igniting mistrust and outrage at every turn. Investors pulled out, contracts were terminated, and the reputation Ryan had built over years dissolved into ash. Colleagues who once admired him now whispered behind closed doors, questioning his integrity and motives. Even those closest to him, family and friends, started distancing themselves, their support evaporating under the weight of his deceit. The man who once stood as a king in his world found himself stripped of career, credibility, and the very foundation that held his life together. Nicole was relentless in her pursuit of justice. She transformed her personal betrayal into a public reckoning, dragging Ryan into a courtroom where every lie was exposed and every promise broken laid bare. The lawsuit was more than a legal battle. It was a statement, a declaration that deceit and manipulation carried consequences. Nicole's demand for custody and compensation wasn't just about money or control. It was about reclaiming her life from the ruins Ryan had left behind. With Elena's unwavering support and the mountain of evidence she had collected, Nicole's case became a powerful testament to the strength of truth and resilience. As the lawsuit gained momentum, Ryan found himself shunned and isolated. Board members distanced themselves, abandoning the man who had once been their leader. Industry peers turned their backs, unwilling to associate with someone engulfed in scandal. Invitations to events ceased, and calls from old allies went unanswered. His world contracted until it was nothing more than a cold, lonely space where echoes of his mistakes bounced relentlessly. Power slipped through his fingers, and with every day, the weight of isolation grew heavier. Meanwhile, Alina embraced a new chapter with quiet dignity. Now a mother, she focused on rebuilding her life with strength, calm, and independence. The pain of betrayal no longer defined her. Instead, it became a catalyst for growth. She surrounded herself with a supportive community and found purpose in nurturing the new life she carried. The future was uncertain, but Alina faced it with a steady heart, determined to create a foundation that no lie could shake. Her healing journey blossomed into action. Alina launched a foundation dedicated to helping women escape toxic marriages and rebuild their lives. Through this work, she transformed her personal pain into a powerful purpose, offering hope and support to those trapped in shadows like she once was. The foundation became a beacon of resilience, a reminder that even in the darkest times, strength could rise. Elena's legacy was no longer tied to Ryan's downfall but to the lives she touched and the futures she helped reshape. Yet Elena never revealed the full extent of her role behind the scenes. The silent architect of Ryan's unraveling, she chose discretion over spectacle. Her justice was delivered not with anger or confrontation, but through careful strategy and unwavering resolve. The truth had been her most effective weapon, and, by wielding it silently, she ensured her victory was undeniable. She watched from a distance as Ryan's world fell apart, knowing that her measured actions spoke louder than any outburst. When asked about the outcome, Elena's response was calm and unwavering. He destroyed his life with his own hands. I simply let the truth do its work. The final judgment was not handed down by courts or crowds, but by the undeniable power of truth itself. Elena's story became one not just of revenge, but of quiet strength, wisdom, and the unshakable conviction that sometimes, the most profound justice is the one delivered without a word.